Tonight, a murder charge for a man accused of killing his mother in a house fire in a small New South Wales town. Calls to postpone a year-long shutdown of a Sydney train line until more bus drivers can be employed. Big wins for Australians at the Golden Globes. Margot Robbie, Elizabeth Debicki and Sarah Snook take home awards. And devastating news for Sam Kerr. The superstar ruptures her ACL just 6 months out from the Paris Olympics. Good evening, Jeremy Fernandez with ABC News. It was a cause dear to her heart. Narol Doble raised money for domestic violence services. Today, her son has been charged with her murder. The 65-year-old woman died of horrific burns after her home was set on fire in a small country town.
The tiny town of Bridbury woke up to the worst possible news: the death of one of their own.
It's a tragedy for everybody. It's a tragedy for the family, it's a tragedy for the community.
Those first on the scene couldn't have prepared for what they found.
I went around the back and there was a lady that had been burnt. So we helped her in a bathtub, like cooling her with water and shading her from the sun because it was like so painful for her. 65-year-old Narol Doble suffered life-threatening burns to her head and torso. Following a police appeal for information, her son Shannon turned himself in 140 kilometres north in Parkes. His mother was airlifted to Sydney's Royal North Shore Hospital in a critical condition where she died several hours later. Poor thing, she was so strong to try and survive, but there was no chance of it, really.
Narol Doble had used Facebook multiple times to raise money for charities, including those that tackle domestic violence. Just over a year ago, she asked for donations for rape and domestic violence services, saying the cause meant a lot to her. Today, her son was charged with her murder.
At different times, certainly tensions can rise in households, and domestic and family violence can be amongst any members within a family.
Mr. Doble appeared in court via video link, speaking only to confirm that he understood the charges. He did not apply for bail and was formally refused. His charges also included damaging property with fire. Shannon Doble will reappear before Young Local Court in March. Lucas Forbes, ABC News, Young.
And if you or someone you know needs help, please contact 1-800-RESPECT by phone or through their website. There are calls for a major public transport project in Sydney to be postponed until more bus drivers can be hired. They're needed to replace train services while the Sydenham to Bankstown line is converted to a metro line. The union says without the extra drivers, passengers would be put at risk.
If this is a sign of things to come, some passengers between Bankstown and Sydenham think their future commute is looking flimsy.
I barely can take it for a month. I can't really take it for a year.
It's enough to make him want to leave.
It's really bad. I was not aware of that. I'm really thinking of changing where I live, to be frank.
Though not everyone's upset.
Much quicker, for me, quicker than train. I'm so happy. Thank you very much, and everything it's good and perfect.
All stop at Sydenham, it's the last call.
Buses are replacing trains on the line until January 25, but later this year, a similar closure will last for 12 months to convert it to a metro.
It will be disruptive. It is a significant change to the network, converting from heavy rail to metro services.
Adding to the woes, a citywide driver shortage.
We are about 250 bus drivers short across the Sydney metropolitan area. That's down from 500 a year ago.
They're simply going to accelerate the recruitment process, which doesn't deliver you good bus drivers, it just puts bums on seats.
All stop to Sydenham!
The union worries for passenger safety. He says the problem won't be fixed until worker training, conditions and recruitment improve.
There should absolutely be a postponement of at least 12 months while the labour market sorts itself out.
The government says the project is vital for connectivity. Penny Timms, ABC News, Sydney.
Police say there's been a worrying increase in potentially lethal skylarking on Sydney trains. The dangerous practice, known as buffer riding, involves hanging onto the backs of trains and trams, and sometimes they're roofs. Police say the number of incidents almost doubled in 2023 compared to the year before. They've started a 3-month crackdown on antisocial behaviour on public transport. Authorities say young people are risking their lives for attention online.
We are seeing these incidents being targeted for YouTube or TikTok. Please do not let this be the last footage that your family sees of you.
A Sydney man has been threatened with a fake bomb for flying a Palestinian flag at his home. Police sent the bomb squad to his house at Botany on Friday, where they found what looked like an improvised explosive device on his car. Attached was a note demanding he take down the flag. Upon inspection, the suspicious item was deemed safe. The Shadow Foreign Affairs Minister, Simon Birmingham, has called the threat illegal and reprehensible. The resident says despite the scare, he'll keep flying the Palestinian flag.
This is terrorism. That's what it is. My partner and I are committed in our support for Palestine, and what we have experienced is nothing compared to what the people in the occupied Palestinian territories have to deal with.
Bangladesh's Prime Minister has won a historic 5th term in Parliament in an election that's been marred by boycotts and deadly violence. The victory didn't come as a surprise. The opposition's accusing the government of rigging the vote. The only suspense was about voter turnout, which was half of what it was at the last election.
Clashes between two groups, accusing each other of rigging the vote. One side supports the ruling party's candidate, the other fighting for their local independent. People in the swelling crowd say there was ballot stuffing at a nearby polling station.
Police arrived pretty quickly on scene and dispersed what could have become a potentially deadly situation, but the atmosphere remains tense.
Boycott! 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 Boycott!
Just kilometres away, more protests. Many are worried about rising fuel and food prices as the once booming economy stagnates. But they don't see any point in voting. The election was boycotted by the main opposition party, who claim the country's institutions have been captured by the government and that the vote is unfair. The boycott almost guaranteed Sheikh Hasina another 5 years in power. She's been accused of running an authoritarian government, arresting almost 10,000 opposition party workers and some senior leaders in the months before the vote. Mohammed Sajal Hussein's father was one of those workers. An outspoken critic of PM Hasina, the tea stall owner was picked up by police in late October, 3 days before a deadly opposition rally. And the next time Mohammed Sajal saw his father was in hospital.
My father was struggling to breathe. He was admitted into the ICU but kept on the floor. He was handcuffed and his legs were also tied.
The family believes he was tortured by authorities for being an opposition party organiser.
Sheikh Hasina is killing people, and now again she is in power.
The government insists the election was free and fair, but a low voter turnout, a crackdown on dissent and the absence of any meaningful opposition are testing the country's democracy. Meghna Bali, ABC News, Dhaka.
A young Palestinian girl has been shot dead by Israeli police near a checkpoint in the occupied West Bank. Security footage shows a white car ploughing into 2 Israeli officers near East Jerusalem. Police then followed the vehicle, shooting a man and a woman and a girl inside a van nearby. Elsewhere, Hamas health officials say more than 73 people have been killed in Gaza and 7 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli drone attack in Jenin. Hundreds of Australian lizards and other reptiles have been uncovered in illegal shipments in Sydney bound for Hong Kong. Police say the creatures are worth more than $1 million on the black market. 4 people are in custody and more arrests are likely.
Hundreds of Australian lizards, snakes, and reptile eggs were bound in small containers ready to be illegally shipped to Hong Kong. The helpless fauna, worth an estimated $1.2 million, was discovered by local authorities. Police described it as a cold-blooded and cruel crime.
These are very, very serious offences. These are offences against our native animals. It's a high-level criminal activity.
This 59-year-old man has been charged with 13 offences, including 11 counts of attempt to export regulated native specimen without permit. 3 others were arrested, including this 31-year-old, who allegedly trapped the wild animals.
Going out into remote areas of Australia, Northern Territory, Western Australia, where, these animals come from, and he would go out there regularly and trap and bring them back.
Police say in all, 257 lizards were rescued after scans at Sydney Airport intercepted a postal shipment last September. But not all survived. Around 25 died in captivity, and it's still unclear how many were successfully exported previously.
We believe we've arrested most of the people involved in this. There are others that we're still looking at, and we're hoping to be, there'll be some more arrests pending in the near future.
Some of the surviving lizards are being looked after at Taronga Zoo and Featherdale Wildlife Park before being released back into the wild. Nabil Nashar, ABC News, Sydney.
The Matildas' Olympic hopes have suffered a major setback after captain Sam Kerr ruptured her anterior cruciate ligament at a training camp in Morocco. Kerr is unlikely to return to the Paris Olympics, which are less than 7 months away.
Matilda's coach, Tony Gustafsson, has called it a devastating blow. Star striker Sam Kerr could be sidelined for up to 12 months.
My, heartfelt thoughts are with Sam at the moment. She has had her time on the sidelines with a few injuries in her career. I no doubt know that she has what it takes to come back from this better and stronger.
It's another setback for Kerr, whose Women's World Cup campaign last year was plagued by a calf injury. The 30-year-old will miss the Matildas' Olympic qualifiers against Uzbekistan next month.
She will have every resource, not only with Chelsea but with Matildas, to get her back onto the pitch.
Kerr is one of many female footballers to rupture their ACL, with women and girls up to 6 times more likely to experience the injury.
We know that women's football is under-resourced compared to men's. So we know that they may play on turf that's not as well kept as the men's side. Their timetables might be more packed. So things like that are gendered in nature. So there's different expectations put on the girls and women's game that we think could set girls and women's up for a higher risk of ACL injury.
Kerr is the first Australian woman to be nominated for the Ballon d'Or and appear on the cover of the video game FIFA. While it will be a race against time to play at the Olympics in July, she'll remain a key part of the Matildas as they set their sights on qualification.
No doubt they'll have her in and amongst the team as much as possible throughout her recovery so that she can still be that mentor that she was throughout the World Cup.
Jo Healy, ABC News.
Oppenheimer has dominated the Golden Globes with 5 awards from 8 nominations. It was a great night for Australian actors too. Elizabeth Debicki and Sarah Snook each won their categories, while Barbie's Margot Robbie was snubbed for an acting award. As the film's producer, she took home a statue for the film's extraordinary box office success.
A Barbie, a princess and a scheming heiress. 3 roles that earned 3 Australians Golden Globes. After 10 nominations, Margot Robbie's Barbie won 2 awards.
Hi, Barbie.
For Best Original Song and the new category of Cinematic and Box Office Achievement. It's now made $2 billion.
We want to thank the brave individuals at Warner's and Mattel for taking an extraordinary risk.
Margot Robbie missed out on Best Musical or Comedy Actress to Emma Stone in Poor Things, but 2 other Aussie stars were successful. Elizabeth Debicki, who played Princess Diana in The Crown, won Best Supporting Actress in a Drama.
This is just astonishing to me.
And Sarah Snook, who took home Best Actress in a Drama for her role as power-hungry Shiv Roy in hit show Succession.
This show it's changed my life.
Succession itself won 4 awards. Beef, which was inspired by a road rage encounter that actually happened to its creator, scooped up 3 statues.
Sir, I hope you honk and yell and inspire others for years to come.
In the film stakes, the night belonged to Oppenheimer, with 5 awards including Best Drama and Best Actor for Cillian Murphy.
Thank you.
These Golden Globes are the first since its governing body was disbanded over corruption issues and a lack of diversity. Lily Gladstone from Killers of the Flower Moon was the first Indigenous actor to be nominated and to win Best Actress. She began her acceptance speech in the Blackfeet language.
Native actors used to speak their lines in English, and then the sound mixers would run them backwards to accomplish Native languages on camera. This is an historic win. It doesn't belong to just me.
An award, she said, that she shared with every little Native kid with a dream. Mazoe Ford, ABC News.
Coming up on 7:30, a visit to Ground Zero of Japan's earthquake zone.
All that's left is the walls. This is the famous Market Street with 1,000 years of history.
We set the table, and as soon as we sat down, bang, that was the first quake.
I'm sorry to say, but people who are missing now, I think that most of them will not be saved.
Also, I'll speak with Simon Baker about the new series, Boy Swallows Universe.
Parts of Victoria are in the middle of a flood emergency tonight. Record rain has caused catchments to overflow and towns are under evacuation orders. Large areas of the state have received more than 3 months of rain in just 24 hours.
Just 15 months after floods devastated central Victoria, this is what communities feared the most. It's now too late to leave Yea, where floodwaters are lapping at the leaves of trees. At Gornong, northeast of Bendigo, the Ferguson Bridge, which sits over the Campaspe River, is completely submerged, a torrent now obscuring the town sign, leaving livestock seeking higher ground and residents knee-deep in water as they survey the damage.
It was higher than every other flood I've ever seen. Yeah, the last one was pretty high, but this was worse. It's like there's no outlet down there.
In the past 24 hours, unprecedented levels of rain has deluged central Victoria. 117 millimetres at Reedsdale and 184 millimetres was recorded at Heathcote.
Water's risen here, risen to in front of where our shop here is on High Street. It would have been at least a metre deep.
I'll give you some information. It's not great news, unfortunately.
Tomorrow, Rochester is in the firing line. Major flooding there is possible after the town received 126 millimetres of rain. Lee Wilson's mother, Lorraine, is still living in her caravan while recovering from last year's floods, which damaged her home.
For hundreds of homes still in Rochester are gutted and haven't been repaired from the 2022 flood. And so for those people, I can only imagine it's a sheer level of either desperation or devastation.
But there's also been frustration. Since Sunday, the State Emergency Service has received more than 1,200 calls for help, including 38 rescues.
And in the majority of cases, it's people taking their lives in their own hands and attempting to drive through flash flood waters.
Cars don't float for very long, and they end up causing serious risk to people in them and can potentially cause loss of life. So please listen to the warnings and don't drive through floodwater.
Staying safe and alert. Mike Lorrigan, ABC News, Seymour.
More Australian soldiers are heading to the UK where they'll train Ukrainian defence forces. As the war with Russia approaches its second anniversary, Australia is committing to expanding its support for Ukraine throughout the year. The latest deployment of 90 soldiers will train members of Ukraine's infantry and work with the nation's young leaders. While it hasn't offered everything Ukraine has asked for, it takes Australia's support for the country to around $1 billion since Russia's invasion.
Australia is one of the largest non-NATO contributors to the resistance effort in Ukraine. Already we've devoted $910 million worth of expenditure. About $730 million of that is on military equipment. So we make decisions as a government based on the advice of the Australian Defence Force, working in cooperation with the Ukrainian military.
In less than a fortnight, Taiwanese voters will go to the polls, and a major issue on their minds is how the self-governed island should deal with its increasingly aggressive neighbour. In a New Year's address, the Chinese president repeated his commitment to the so-called reunification of China and Taiwan. Taiwan's military is only 1/10 the size of China's. Increasing numbers of Taiwanese people are taking matters into their own hands.
China wants Taiwan to know it's getting ready. Propaganda videos show a fierce fighting force on the move in its bid to take Taiwan back. But for the everyday people living in Taiwan, preparations are far more practical.
I have a fear of war, especially due to the war in Ukraine, which made me very worried.
Despite the increasing talk of conflict, many private citizens feel the Taiwanese government isn't doing enough to prepare, leaving a void that operations like Kuma Academy are seeking to fill, teaching basic skills that will assist in a Chinese invasion or blockade.
I was conscripted for 1 year, and that was about 12 years ago. Our mandatory military service in Taiwan isn't very comprehensive.
Nearly 2/3 of participants here are women. For many, this is the first time since school or university that they've actively learnt what to do in the event of an invasion or blockade.
My mother is in her 90s. Her mobility is quite limited due to her age. I hope that if I learn all these techniques and skills, I can help my family and neighbours.
Reading the news in Australia, you might think there's a constant sense of panic here in Taiwan, but really everyday life is very normal. And while there might be a sense of unease bubbling under the surface, day-to-day signs like these are often the only reminder of the tension simmering in the strait.
But organisers say demand for civil defence training is increasing, and many participants are coming in feeling a sense of anxiety.
Because my child was just born, I felt a sense of panic. I thought, what if they attack?
It's all about all this mental preparedness. I mean, the thing is that resilience is more about all this willingness to fight, and resistance is more about all these practical skills.
Because if war comes, every little contribution will help. Kathleen Calderwood, ABC News, Taipei.
To finance now, here's Daniel Ziffer.
Fuel is one of the few products where massive illuminated signs tell you the current price as you move around. So we're very sensitive to changes in it. A litre of unleaded petrol was, on average in Australia last week, $1.85. That's down a bit on the average for the past year. The price of diesel basically tracks this graph, but at about 10 cents more per litre. Instability in the Middle East isn't helping, and the price of crude oil leapt today, but there's another element adding to the pain at the pump. Australia is one of the only developed nations without fuel efficiency standards, meaning we get dumped with the world's dirty cars. The new standard was meant to be released before Christmas, but it didn't happen. The federal government says it is taking the time to get it right. And you might not like to hear this, but we have some of the cheapest and lowest tax fuel in the world. This is a list of similar countries in the OECD. Norway drills way more oil than we do and pays more too. So in summary, we don't tax it much and we don't insist on good cars to burn it. Overseas markets gave a largely negative lead for stock traders, and our share market copied the homework, falling slightly today. For many people, it was their first day back at work, but the Australian dollar is still on holiday, moving down 0.0002 of a cent against the American dollar. Let's call that flat. And that's finance.
Australian Open organisers are hopeful fans haven't seen the last of Rafael Nadal after the Spanish champion pulled out of the tournament. The two-time winner suffered a minor injury while playing in Brisbane and is going back to Spain to get treatment. Meanwhile, Australia's greatest hope, Alex de Minaur, says he's been loving proving the doubters wrong as he enjoys the best form of his career.
A rain-soaked Melbourne Park dampened the opening day of qualifying, but Alex de Minaur found a dry court as he tunes up ahead of his best chance at an Australian Open title. The 24-year-old has gained more fans after breaking into the top 10 for the first time.
It's a pretty good thing to wake up to this morning.
To get there, de Minaur boasted big United Cup wins over 3 top 10 players. Sometimes maligned for lacking the weapons to beat the best, he says he thrives on people's criticism.
It's something that, you know, I've heard my whole career and it's fine. I love proving people wrong.
De Minaur's hopes lifted overnight after Spanish great Rafael Nadal announced he's pulling out of the tournament after tearing a muscle in Brisbane.
Obviously extremely sad and disappointing that he's missing.
While only a minor injury, it could be the final time Australian fans see the 37-year-old up close.
I hope it's not the last time, but if it is the last time, I think it's, you know, pretty special for those that were in the stadium and those that were able to come along all week.
In Brisbane, Grigor Dimitrov enjoyed a quiet night after winning an ATP title trophy for the first time since 2017.
Yeah, we just got some food, packed and got to bed. That was about it.
The 32-year-old Bulgarian snapped his title drought by beating young gun Holger Rune in the men's final. In the women's, Yelena Rybakina thrashed Arina Sabalenka to avenge last year's Australian Open final. Sabalenka won just 3 games in a stunning result. And Alexander Zverev has saved 2 match points to take Germany to a United Cup triumph over Poland in Sydney. Tom Maddox, ABC News.
Australia has levelled its T20 Women's Cricket Series against India with a 6-wicket victory in Mumbai. Batting first, the hosts posted 8 for 130. Kim Garth, Annabelle Sutherland and Georgia Wareham each took 2 wickets for the tourists. In reply, Australia reached the victory target with an over to spare. Elise Perry top scored with an unbeaten 34 in her 300th international for Australia, hitting the winning runs with a 6.
It's kind of crept up on me a little bit, and in the last couple of days it sort of just made me reminisce where it all started, really, in the backyard with my dad and my brother. I'm especially grateful that somehow starting there has miraculously turned into a career for as long as it has been.
Let's take a check of the weather now with Tom Saunders.
2024 has started with a soaking. Broken Hill has already received 118 millimetres of rain. That's more than 4 times their January average. Now, here are the totals so far this month. Already more than 50 millimetres across much of the west. And in the 24 hours to 9 a.m, 93 millimetres at Bourke, their heaviest rain in 15 years. A gauge just to the west of Griffith recorded 119 millimetres. And a timely reminder, the wet summer is no surprise because El Nino, while it reduces rainfall through the winter and spring, does not impact rainfall through the summer. Now, the heavy falls today shifted to the east. Since 9 a.m, Forbes 45 millimetres, only 3 millimetres though recorded at Sydney's Observatory Hill. The cloud combined with northerly winds to bring minimums 2 or 3 above the average. Now, despite the overcast skies, maximums still reached the mid to high 20s. That was 1 above average for the city, but as much as 5 below in the west. High humidity, above 90% for some suburbs, made it feel closer to 30. The statewide minimums were as much as 8 above the average, although it was cooler just along parts of the north coast. The cloud and rain then brought a coolish day. Maximums were as much as 9 below the average. On the satellite, the cloud band stretches from the tropics right down to Tasmania. Now, the heaviest rain has fallen from the system in Victoria, up to 180 millimetres in 24 hours and major flooding in the state's north. The city of Bendigo was hammered by its heaviest 24-hour rain on record, 92 millimetres, and that's with data to 1863. On the chart tomorrow, the trough responsible for the rain will move east and weaken, although still some heavy falls continuing over our north. Around the country, showers and the chance of storms in Darwin, Brisbane and Canberra. The other capitals are looking dry. For the northeast tomorrow, a very high chance of showers and thunderstorms for all regions. Now, the risk of severe storms, flash flooding probably the main threat. Humid with highs from the mid-20s to the low 30s. For the southeast tomorrow, a high chance of showers and the risk of a storm. That could see some severe storms. Now, there'll be a weak southerly along the coast, which will drop humidity slightly, maximums reaching the mid-20s. To the west then, a high chance of showers and potentially severe storms for the slopes, grading to a medium chance for the eastern Riverina and the eastern upper western. It will be dry in the southwest. On the waters, strong winds for the mid-north coast and seas ranging from 1 to 2 metres. Now for Sydney, a warm night, despite a weak southerly change overnight. Still humid and mostly cloudy tomorrow with a shower or 2 and a possible severe storm. Temperature range 21 to 27 for the city, climbing up to 29 for the west. The sun will rise at 5:53. It's setting at 8:11. And ahead, partly cloudy Wednesday with a possible storm. It's more likely in the west, 29 to 33. It's back to showers and storms on Thursday, 28 to 29. Shower or two Friday and 28. Then further showers are possible this weekend, Jeremy.
Tom, thank you. Terrific to have your company this Monday evening. David Spears joins you next with 7:30.